Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about how to conjugate Spanish verbs to the present tense. Alright, let's get started. First, we're going to look at how conjugation works in English. Basically, what we mean when we say conjugate is making the verb fit the subject. For example, let's say I wanted to say, she dances very well. This is the conjugated form. But let's say I didn't conjugate. I might end up saying, she danced very well. But this is wrong because it's I dance and she dances. Or for another verb, let's say to be, it's I am, you are, and she is. Basically, the point I'm trying to make is the verb changes based on the person doing the action. We're going to be doing the same thing with Spanish verbs, and this is going to be pretty simple because Spanish verbs follow a pattern as well. Spanish verbs can be put into three categories based on their endings. You have verbs that end in an AR. An example of this would be bailar, which means to dance. To dance. You also have verbs that end in an ER. An example of this would be comer, which means to eat. And lastly, you have verbs that end in an IR. And an example of this would be escribir, which means to write. Now, in order to conjugate a verb in the present tense, you only have to follow two steps. Step 1 is dropping the last two letters of the verb. And when you do this, you get the stem of the verb. For example, the stem of bailar would be, you cross out the last two letters, the A and the R, and you end up with bail. For comer, if you crossed out the last two letters, which are the E and the R, you end up with com. And for escribir, if you crossed out the last two letters, which are the I and the R, you end up with escrib. Now, like I mentioned before, these words or parts of words are called the stem of the verb. Now, let's look at step 2. According to step 2, you have to take the stem of the verb and add its specific conjugate endings. Now, depending on the ending of the verb, as in AR, ER, or IR, the verb will have different conjugate endings. If it's an AR verb, it will conjugate like this. The yo form, which is I, ends with an O. The tú form, which is you, ends with an as. The él, ella, or usted form, which is he, she, or formal you, ends with an a. The nosotros form, which is we, ends with an amos. And the ellos, ellas, or ustedes form ends with an an, which is they or y'all. Now for ER verbs, the yo form ends with an o. The tú form ends with an s. The él, ella, or usted form ends with an e. The nosotros form ends with an hemos, and the ellos, ellas, or ustedes form ends with an n. Now lastly, we have IR verbs. The yo form ends with an o. The tú form ends with an s. The él, ella, or usted form ends with an e. The nosotros form ends with an imos. And the ellos, ellas, or ustedes forms end with an n. Notice how the ER and IR verb conjugations are identical except for the nosotros form, where for ER it's hemos and IR it's imos. I also recommend that you memorize these conjugations because it will make the process so much easier. But let's look at an example. For AR, let's take bailar again. According to step 1, we find the stem, where we cross out the last two letters and we get bail. Now put this stem in each of the boxes of the conjugation table. For yo, you get bailo. For tú, you get bailas. For él, ella, or usted, you get baila. Nosotros bailamos. And ellos, ellas, or ustedes bailan. So, if I wanted to say, I dance, I would say, yo bailo. If I wanted to say, you dance, I would say, tú bailas. If I wanted to say, he dances, or she dances, or you dance in a formal way, I would say, él, ella, or usted baila. If I wanted to say, we dance, I would say, nosotros bailamos. And if I wanted to say, they dance, or y'all dance, I would say, ellos, or ustedes bailan. Now let's do the same thing for comer. According to step 1, we find the stem, which we cross off E and R and we get com. Now if we put this in each of the boxes of the table, we get yo como, tú comes, él, ella, or usted come, nosotros comemos, and ellos, ellas, or ustedes comen. Now let's look at an IR verb, escribir. For escribir, the stem would be, cross off the I and the R, and you get escrib. Now we put this in each of the boxes. The yo form would be yo escribo. The tú form would be tú escribes. Él, ella, or usted escribe. Nosotros escribimos. And ellos, ellas, or ustedes escriben. Alright, now I have a couple of practices for you here. I have in purple some sentences in English, and in the blue I have the verbs that would be in Spanish for the sentences I just wrote down. And on the right side I have the conjugation tables that you can use as a reference. So what I want you to do is pause this video and try these questions out for yourself, and then resume the video to check your answers with me. Alright, let's get started. The first one is dibujar. So I cross out the A and the R to get the stem, and I end up with dibuj. Now, I see that this is an AR verb, and I'm looking at the I or the yo form. So I go to the table, and I see that in the AR form, the yo form ends with an O. So I add an O to the end of my stem, and I end up with dibujo. So the sentence translated would be, yo dibujo. Now, the second one. Here the verb is vivir. To find the stem, I cross out the I and the R, and I end up with viv. Now I see that this is an IR verb, and I'm looking at the L form because it's he. So I go to the table, and I see that it ends in an e. So I add an e to the end, and I end up with the verb vive. So the sentence translated would be, él vive. Now number 3. The verb here is correr. To find the stem, we cross out the E and the R, and we end up with cor. Now this is an ER verb, and we're looking at the nosotros form. So I go to the ER table and I look at the nosotros form, and it ends with an hemos. So I add an hemos to the end of the verb to get corremos. So the sentence translated would be nosotros corremos. Now the last one, or the fourth one. To find the stem of the verb ver, we cross out the last two letters, which are the E and the R, and we end up with the stem v, or V, just a V. And then I see that this is an ER verb, and we're looking at the ellos or they form. So I go to the ER table, and I look at the they form, and I see that it ends in an N. So I add an E and an N to the end of my verb, and I end up with the verb ven. So the sentence translated would be ellos ven. And that's how you conjugate Spanish verbs in the present tense. If this video helped, please leave a like and hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions, feel free to comment them down below. I have linked a translation practice in the description box so you can get better at your conjugations. And good luck studying. Bye!